call him on the phone right now. We're going to offer him $15,000 for those Polaroids. And I called him on the phone in Italy, and he said, aliens are not for sale. Glenn Steckling told me that NASA said that there were about 10,000 of them living on this earth among us. And what they did, they left after about 10 years. This is a well-documented case. You want to read it? Read Mass Contacts, read the whole W56 story. The people are still alive because I interviewed him last year. Here is Antonio Urzi, Milano. Those are not magnetic buttons. I've known Antonio Urzi for 20 years. He's been photographing UFOs that look like Adamski stuff. So I'm thinking to myself, are these people coming back? Antonio Urzi and his wife live in an attic apartment in Milano. These are not photographs, these are movies. You can go on YouTube and see the entire movie. He's a contactee who has these kinds of films, and it's not an accident. He has definite messages. All right, I'm going fast, but because I've got so much to tell you. You know, the Travis Walton case had 2 human-type beings in them. And I did the Charles Hall case. I did that Tall Whites at Indian Springs case. That happened in 1965. You people in your hands should have a timeline. It has Ricardo and my picture on it. A timeline of all the times these human-type aliens came. 1965 was a Charles Hall Indian Springs case. He was a weatherman in Indian Springs. He's telling the truth. It happened 1 year, 300 beings. There's me with Charles Hall at Area 51 Indian Springs facility. He met, they were guests of the government. They had their children with them. The books are called Millennial Hospitality. The fact that their children were wearing clothes from the Sears Roebuck catalog really interested me, because I am so brainwashed like everybody else to think that all we have is abductions in this case. I didn't realize in '65 that Charles Hall was interacting with beings. This is the Michael Wolff Cruvant case, who people read Catchers of Heaven. I did that story. Probably will be the next time I do a book. And Michael, that is a photograph of a being. It's a photograph of Sarah from Altair 4. Now, could he mix with us? Could you meet him at Starbucks? Would you know he was from somewhere else? Michael is smiling. Sarah is the guy on the left. Now, I asked Timothy Good, did you ever meet a human-type being, alien? And he said, yes. He said, I was in New York. Timothy Good, who is an incredible researcher, because like me, he's a field researcher. He said, and I saw a guy, he said, in a really, they seem to wear these suits, these beings. They don't know how, they think that if they come on this planet with a suit that they won't be recognized or whatever, but he's sitting in a suit, he said, a 3-piece suit in the lobby of a New York hotel, and Timothy says telepathically to him, if you are not from this planet, take your index finger and put it on the left side of your nose. And the being did that. Then he got up, and I said, what happened? He said, I was so shocked. He said, I didn't know what to do. So the being then folded the newspaper, got up, and walked out. I asked Colin Andrews, I said, did you ever meet one of these people? He goes, yeah, in Connecticut. I said, how did it happen? He said, well, Cynthia and I went for breakfast, and I got in my mind, we are coming to meet you. And he said, a beautiful woman on a bicycle walked in, sat in the corner, stared at him, and said, I am here. Colin was so frozen in fear that he did not go up and talk to her, and he told me he felt so bad because he was shocked. He saw her, she was beautiful, she was sitting in the corner. She looked at him and she said, I am here. Then she got her coffee and left. Now, what does that tell you? Glenn Steckling told me that NASA said that there were about 10,000 of them living on this earth among us. This is like, they're here. So anyway, going on, did I cover Billy Meyer? Of course I did. Of course I did. Here, I went to see Billy Meyer. Here I am with Wendell Stevens in the Tucson airport. He did the story. So I got to ask him, and he told me, he said, well, you know, Paula, he said, I was with Billy Meyer, he said, and it was snowing, and he'd get a call, and he'd walk out the door, and his footprints disappeared. So we knew that we had to go over to another city to pick him up. And he said he also saw some historical events on television, that the Pleiadians had some historical events on TV. And here I am going to 𝗪𝗏𝗧𝗏. I spent 3 days there, and realized that the Japanese bought the metal, all the movies. I saw the movies while I was there. Here's the craft underneath the highway. The cars are going underneath that. That's not a fishing pole. And Photoshop was invented in 1992, and this is 1970. So my colleagues that are saying those things are photoshopped are crazy. There is no Photoshop until 92. And to tell me the pictures are too good, the pictures are too clear, they're not real, let's debunk them. The Pleiadians wanted to do a show, stage a show for Billy Meyer. Now there's some problems around that case, because I think the Pleiadians made a little bit of a mess around it, but they were people, and they really were there, and they really tried to talk to him. Here's Eugenio Siracusa. Here, Eugenio Siracusa had now there's the different people that there's Orthon in the middle. There's on the left-hand side up in the corner is who Siracusa saw. This is Eugenio Siracusa on the island of Sicily. He had contact with Venusians when I talked to, and he had a lot of followers. One of the followers is Giorgio Bongiovanni, the man that has the stigma. He's a friend of Jaime Maussan's. And who's in that group is Maurizio Cavallo, that you'll see later. But what's interesting for me is that letter from Eisenhower to Eugenio Siracusa telling him that he's listening to the message. You know, what's President Eisenhower doing talking to a contactee on the island of Sicily? Because I'm convinced President Eisenhower knew everything. He had the meeting in Holloman. He knew that we could change the timeline. His message to everybody was, beware of the military-industrial complex. He knew there were people that were warning us, and he knew they were somehow connected with us. That is a letter to Siracusa from General Eisenhower. Okay, Siracusa basically did the same thing. At that same time, and you've got that piece of paper, at that same time in South Africa, you have Beyond the Light Barrier, Elizabeth Clarer, who meets Octan, and there's her story. She meets this man who is from another planet. She has a child by him. She is decorated by the British government. He is a man, he and his brother were collecting plant samples in South Africa. If you haven't read Beyond the Light Barrier, it's a very detailed account of her contact with this man in South Africa. And she brings back a plant, a fern from that planet. Michael Hesman said these were the best pictures of UFOs that Elizabeth Clarer ever took, and there was the man she met. Does he look like any of us? Okay, well, there's Elizabeth Clare's story, you know. I mean, read Beyond the Light Barrier. I'm going really fast because I want to get to South America. Here is Eugenio Siracusa. Okay, not Eugenio, I'm sorry, there's Maurizio Cavallo. Maurizio Cavallo is the follower of Eugenio. Maurizio Cavallo lives near Turin, Italy. He had contact with this guy named Swell coming out of the ship. When I went to do the story, I was very skeptical, so I had to go back there 3 times because I wasn't sure. But then he said, Paula, he said, these are the Polaroids of the people. And he said, I've never shown them to anyone. He said, because 10 years ago, Swell, who was his contact, said, there would be an American journalist that's going to knock on your door, and when she comes, you tell her that you can show the photos, he said. And he said, we call her the Bridge. So my name is the Bridge. and he said, and here they are. Here's the and on the right-hand side, that woman looks like Grace Kelly. That's one of the beings that were the Polaroids, part of the Polaroids of 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪's story. And I was in Laughlin, and I showed this for the first time, and the Japanese came and said, "Call him on the phone right now. We're going to offer him $15,000 for those Polaroids." And I called him on the phone in Italy, and he said, "Aliens are not for sale." No, that's my example of the Charles Hall being. He said she looked like Twiggy, but the woman up in the corner, that's a Polaroid of 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪. And then what else do I have? Oh, 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪. Her ear is down to here, and Billy Meyer is not watching the Gold Diggers on Dean Martin's show. Come on. He's not even speaking English. I mean, he's going to watch the Gold Diggers. And our group have debunked that picture of Ascot saying, "Oh, that's one of the dancers on the Dean Martin show, the Gold Digger." One of the dancers, of all the dancers, they picked that one, and they say he's a hoax. It's ridiculous. Her ear is down to here anyway, if you look at where their ears are placed. The 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪 case, I'm going to race through that because you can get this book. It's called Mass Contacts. I happened to do this case because I met with Stefano Brescia, and he told me that in 1956, on the timeline you guys have, that 10 Italians had this contact with these beings that they call W56s. And it was sponsored by one of the very wealthy Italian named Bruno Samaciccia. And guess what? This was a case in Italy that's got so much support because the fishermen would not go out and fish because these craft are coming out of the sea at the time. And the people involved in this case, like 𝗪𝗪𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗪 on the bottom there, I interviewed him in Lake Como, and he told me that he and the 10 other Italians that were involved in this, and here I am with 𝗪𝗪𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗪, said that these beings, and I'll talk about it really quickly because here's the being. See him? He is 10 foot tall. We measured the trees and all the plants and everything around him. And the movies are this, but this is the message. They have a technology called harmony. It's called 𝗪𝗓𝗓. These people had a technology, and they said, "We can stay with you 10 Italians, provided you don't fight and you don't argue among each other. The minute you argue or fight, we have to leave. Because our technology is a technology of harmony." You can call it love, but love is thrown around a lot. So, harmony, don't fight. And what they did, they left. After about 10 years. This is a well-documented case. You want to read it? Read Mass Contacts, read the whole W56 story. The people are still alive because I interviewed him last year, and Stefano Brescia was invited by Michael Sala in Hawaii and is completely ignored. These cases are completely ignored. They're not exciting enough. So Latin America, I'm getting to Latin America. There we go. That is Ricardo with the UFO over his head. There was a group in Latin America in the 1970s that got messages after they would do meditation. They started with automatic writing, and the beings would tell them that they were outside the city near the 𝗪𝗪𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗪 Desert and to meet them, and the first person involved with that was 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗧 Pazuello, and explained how that happened with his entire family, with his brother Charlie, with his family, and so forth. These group of young men, they were very young men at the time, would go out to the 𝗪𝗪𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗪 Desert. They would camp. They would camp there, and what would happen is they would fast also, and they would wait for a certain amount of time, and the beings would appear. And here's the example of them out in the desert. This is 1970s. It's on your timeline, the 1970s, and they would have contact. And I started interviewing them one by one with an interpreter because I wanted to know, number one, how did they go out there and meet these space people coming off these ships? I mean, I was talking to Charlie, and he said, the ship would land, the being would say, come, like this, and the guys would just walk on. And he said, I even touched the side of the ship. It was always a message of unity. It was a message of trying to tell them that they were like us. This is Luis Fernando Mostacio from Bolivia, who also, you can see a UFO there, sees UFOs in Lake Titicaca, and then 10 minutes. There's Enrique Villanueva, who's here at the conference. He also had contact, but this is the story that I want to tell you. There's Ricardo. So, okay, so the book, you can get it. It's on Amazon. It's called Contact from the Planet Apu. Ricardo was one of those people. And here I am in Shasta. So let me tell you, this is the end of the story, but it's the beginning. It's the beginning of the end. What happened is I was doing the research because I did all of America, and I realized that the beings left America, the human type beings, the space brothers, because all we're interested in is the craft, the back engineering, the DeLong stuff, the making of the money, the space wars, all that stuff. We don't care who's inside or where they come from or anything about that. We don't talk about those things. So they went down to Latin America, where I believe they could have a heart-to-heart connection with the people, because the people in Latin America have the biggest hearts. You can't have an intellectual connection with a being. What kind of intellectual connection do you want to have? I want to ask him if he went to grad school. What do you want to say to this being that's in front of you, that's so forth? You can only have a consciousness connection with these people, heart to heart. You're alive, I'm alive. But the Latin American people only have heart to heart. They don't intellectualize all this stuff that we do. So they're going to, these beings are going to say, well, we can't talk to the people, Australia can't talk to the governments. We're going to go down and we're going to take individual contactees. We're going to give them messages, and they will go and speak to people that are like them. So what happened was, when I did Ricardo's story, he called me because he goes to the Gobi Desert a lot. The exact time those beings will appear, because it's on automatic writing. So at 8:33, I think it was 8:33 that night, I was sitting next to Fernando, and I was looking at the craft that were coming in. But I had been with Stephen Greer, and I had been with other people, and I'd seen craft before, and it was nice, these little UFOs coming. There were two of them. They came together at that exact time. Since it was Sunday, and since I was starving, and since all I could think about was food, and all I could think about was, it's over, so I can get a decent meal. I'm sitting there going, okay, well, I saw a UFO. I'm happy. This is great, At about 11 o'clock, he comes down over to me, and he kneels down, and he says, Antarel is here. Can you handle it? Do you remember? And I didn't know what to do, because this was a one-shot deal. This was Close Encounters. The invitation that Richard Dreyfuss had to go on board, remember? So I had to make an instant decision. I said, okay. And he goes, well, you're going to not go alone. He said, Sol is down there, Corina's down there, Sol is his wife. She was already down there. He says, you're going to hold hands with Mercedes and Shuyapa. It's totally dark. You cannot use a flashlight. I was tripping all the way down there because I couldn't see anything in front of me. He goes, and I can't go, he said, but you're going to see, he said, near that tree, something come up that's misty. It's like a mist. He said, we call that a Zendra. You stand there in this mist and don't move and let go of the hand of the person next to you. Well, that was the most terrifying part of all, because as long as I had her hand, I was okay. I got down there, we walked down there, this mist came up from the ground, I could see it. We were standing there from here to the end of the room. I don't know how many yards that is. There's a man against a tree that's 10 foot tall that has a hoodie on. He has a hoodie on. He has like a gym suit. He's very built. He's standing there against the tree. I see Sol with her white jacket, walking towards him with her hands extended because it's the first time she's ever seen 𝗪𝗕𝗏. And Ricardo is yelling up the hill, "Don't touch him." Do you remember that? You said, "Don't touch him." And I thought, oh, she's going over there. She's going to walk over there. There is no explanation for contact. It is a clash of dimensions. I didn't know what to do. I stood there and just looked. I didn't know what I should do. There's no protocol. He was talking to me in a language I did not understand. It sounded like an echo, a bullhorn. So this bullhorn type echo, and the language I didn't understand. And I'm looking, and I thought, well, what am I supposed to do? So I bowed my head. I said, "I respect you, 𝗪𝗕𝗏." That's all I could say. "I respect you, 𝗪𝗕𝗏." And then at a certain point, after about 3 minutes of this language that was all over the place, it was in the trees, it wasn't in my head, he said like a robot, "Thank you." Then he turned around with one and walked right back into I'm the only one that heard the thank you. But I thought I was going nuts. Because I said, did he say thank you? Did I hear that? Did he say thank you? The other two people didn't hear that. I heard that. And then when he walked back into the forest, I ran over to Ricardo and I said, I think he said thank you. I think he said thank you. And Ricardo said, "Well, you accepted the invitation." And I said, "But, I didn't expect." There is no preparation for contact. Neither are there any protocols because you don't know what to do. And I, since then, have had other experiences, which I've written in my book. And the basic message from 𝗪𝗕𝗏, who comes from the planet Apu, and it's too bad you don't understand Spanish because Ricardo's doing a presentation for the first time in the United States tomorrow at the Spanish part of this. But I've invited Ricardo to do a lecture in Crestone, Colorado on the 30th, the 1st and 30th of August, 1st and 2nd, because Crestone, I bought 5 acres of land right near where Stephen Greer did the movie Sirius, and I think Ricardo should transcend into the American world. I've had his books translated into English because I went with Ricardo and Sol to the Atacama Desert in September of 2014 with 70 people, where the beings told him what time again they would appear. We saw the ships. Ricardo disappeared for 1 hour in the sand dunes. He came back in tears. He was crying, and basically he said, "We have a problem with water. They told me we're going to have a problem with ecology." And we had hurricanes that year. So is he getting messages? Yes, he's getting. I was there, and I ended up in the hospital because I don't do very well in altitude. I'm trying to make an effort. The reason why I'm supporting this thing is about world peace. It's about consciousness. It's about, do you want to do something about this, or is this entertainment for everybody? You have a decision to make. If this is entertainment, then just keep watching your TV and your internet and so forth. If you want to make a difference, these people, whether it be Van Ju, came to the Ecuadorian embassy and talked about the earthquake, whether it be Adamski that talked about changing the timeline, these people have come, these space people have come and talked to us. Maybe you can't wear them on your t-shirt, but for God's sakes, we are related to the people from the stars. We are not just human beings. We're part of a cosmos of other people. And I think it's time we start paying attention to this. And if you have to go and look at the Latin American situation, I've had the books translated. I think we may have two of Ricardo's books here in English. And then my book has all of the other contactees, because I want to get all of them. I wanted to get all of them, but I don't speak Spanish.
If you enjoyed this, make sure to watch the next video on Awaken Zone. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, but you won't want to miss what's coming next.